My name is Jake, and I've been married to Laura for 5 years. We met in college, and from the moment we crossed paths, I knew she was someone special. She had this light about her, this warmth and kindness that drew people in. We were inseparable during our early days together, and that bond only grew stronger as we navigated the ups and downs of life. We built a life I was proud of, a house, a dog, a shared vision of the future. I truly believe we were happy. I trusted her with everything I had. It wasn't perfect. No relationship is. But we were good, or at least I thought we were. I still remember that morning so clearly, as if the world shifted with a single moment. It started like any other Tuesday. I woke up to the sound of Laura in the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the air. I kissed her on the cheek as I passed by, ready to start my day. The routine felt familiar and safe. At work, I found myself buried in spreadsheets, deadlines, and conference calls. The office was quiet, everyone busy with their tasks, and the day passed uneventfully. But something felt off. A vague sense of unease hovered over me, though I couldn't pinpoint the cause. It wasn't until later that afternoon, when I returned home, that the unease transformed into something much darker. I checked my email as I usually do after work, only to find something that made my stomach drop. The subject line was simple: justice. I opened it without thinking, and what I saw froze me in place. The email was brief. "You deserve to know the truth. She's been lying to you. Here's the proof." There was an attachment. Hesitating, I clicked on it, my hands shaking as I opened the files. Pictures. The first image hit me like a punch to the gut. It was Laura, my wife, standing outside a hotel, her body pressed close to a man I didn't recognize. Their hands were intertwined and they were laughing, clearly comfortable with each other in a way that made my heart race with disbelief. The second photo was worse. Laura and this man inside a hotel room, sitting on a bed, leaning toward each other in an intimate manner. There was no mistaking what I was seeing. They were too close, too comfortable, too familiar. My heart raced and a cold sweat broke out across my body. I sat there, frozen in place, staring at the pictures, unable to comprehend what I was looking at. Was this real? Was it some sick joke? I had to know who this man was. Why hadn't Laura ever mentioned him? Why hadn't I seen the signs? I looked again at the email. No name, no contact information, just a statement that chilled me to my core. "I'm just seeking justice for the one who's been betrayed." The words felt like a slap in the face. Justice? I wasn't sure what to think. But one thing was undeniable. The images were real. The man in the pictures, whoever he was with Laura in a way that went far beyond friendship, and she hadn't told me about him. She hadn't told me anything. My mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Had she been seeing someone else? Was this an affair? How long had it been going on? I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could I have missed this? How could she have lied to me so easily? I wanted to confront her right then and there. I wanted to demand answers, to make sense of what had just shattered my world. But I couldn't. The thought of facing her in that moment, with this knowledge hanging over me, felt impossible. My mind was in turmoil. How could I trust anything she had ever said? How could I look at her and not wonder if she had been hiding more from me all along? I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. The pictures, the email. It all felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I had trusted Laura with my heart, with everything, and now everything felt like it was crumbling. I spent the next few hours pacing the apartment, my mind spinning. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't even bring myself to eat. I had to confront her. I had to ask her about this man, this affair that seemed to be right in front of me. But I didn't know how. I didn't know where to start. I heard the front door open. Laura's voice echoed through the hallway, her usual light tone greeting me as she entered. But to me, it felt like the sound of a stranger walking through the door. She had no idea what I knew, no idea what had been revealed. I stood there in the kitchen, waiting, my heart racing. This was it, the moment when everything would change. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to face her. But what would I say? How would I confront her without sounding paranoid or crazy? She walked into the kitchen, her smile faltering when she saw my expression. "Jake?" she asked, concern creeping into her voice. "What's wrong?" I swallowed, the words stuck in my throat. "Who is he, Laura?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I saw panic in her eyes. She knew. She knew I had found out. And in that moment, I knew that everything had changed. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think clearly. Laura's face was as pale as a sheet, and her eyes darted nervously from the kitchen counter to me. She hadn't even tried to deny it. She had seen the photos, the evidence of her betrayal, and now she was waiting for me to speak. My heart was racing, every beat pounding in my ears. The silence between us stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I wasn't sure if I was going to collapse or lash out. My hands were trembling and my throat was tight with emotion. This wasn't how I imagined confronting her. I had always thought if the worst came to pass, I would have the courage to face it head on, to ask the hard questions. But now that I was here, I felt paralyzed. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had built my life with, was standing in front of me, and I had no idea who she really was. "Jake, Laura started, but her voice cracked, and she paused, her face scrunching in anguish. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but they didn't soften the anger and confusion that churned inside me. She was crying. She was sorry. But was she sorry because she got caught? Or was she genuinely regretful for what she had done? "Who is he, Laura?" I asked again, my voice rough. This time it was almost a command. "Who is that man? And why was he with you like that? Why didn't you tell me?" I could see her hands shaking now, her lip trembling as she wiped a tear away. "Jake, I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen," she said, her voice faltering. She took a step toward me, but I instinctively took a step back. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "No," I said sharply. "Don't touch me." The words were out before I could stop them. It was like a reflex, something inside me trying to shield myself from the hurt that was threatening to consume me. She recoiled, looking at me with both fear and sorrow, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not now, not after what I had seen. "Jake, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's not what you think. It wasn't supposed to happen." I clenched my fists, the anger bubbling up from deep inside me. "What wasn't supposed to happen, Laura? You've been lying to me for months, and now you're standing here telling me it wasn't supposed to happen? How long has this been going on? How long have you been seeing him?" Her eyes darted to the ground, and I could see the guilt on her face. The shame. She didn't say anything for a long time. She was searching for the right words, but none of them could undo the hurt she had caused. None of them could make this okay. "Please, just let me explain," she said, her voice pleading. "It wasn't planned, Jake. It just happened. I've been so miserable. I thought I could keep everything under control, that I could keep the two parts of my life separate. But I couldn't. And now I'm here, and I see how much I've hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself for betraying you." Miserable? Betraying me? I had no words. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything, was standing in front of me, broken, confessing to an affair, and I couldn't find it in me to feel sorry for her. I couldn't feel anything other than pain and confusion. "Who is he, Laura?" I asked again, my voice colder now, like I was forcing the words through a thick layer of ice. I had to know. I couldn't face her until I knew everything. She finally looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "His name is Daniel," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "He works at the same marketing firm I do. He's been there for a while. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand, but I don't know how to fix it now. I don't know how to make this right." Daniel. His name echoed in my mind like a final nail in the coffin of our relationship. All I could picture was him, this man who had been so close to my wife, someone I hadn't even known about. He had crossed the line. He had taken something that was mine. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional. And now the trust I had built our entire relationship on had crumbled into dust. "You didn't mean for it to get out of hand?" I repeated, disbelief and anger rising in my chest. You didn't mean for it to happen. How long have you been lying to me, Laura? How long have you been seeing him behind my back? I, I didn't know how to stop, she said, her voice trembling. I've been so unhappy, Jake. At work, at home, with everything. I thought I could control it, but I couldn't. I didn't know what to do. And then, her voice cracked as she looked away, unable to finish her sentence. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. This was my wife, the woman I had loved. But how could I ever go back to her after this? How could I ever look at her the same way again? I didn't know if I could. The trust, the bond that had held us together, was gone. She had shattered it, piece by piece. And no matter how sorry she was, no matter how much she wanted to fix it, I wasn't sure if we could ever go back to the way things were. I don't know what to do, Laura, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. She broke down then, her body shaking with sobs as she collapsed onto the floor. Please, Jake, I love you. I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. I stood there, staring at her, my heart torn between the love I still felt for her and the betrayal that burned in my chest. I wanted to comfort her. I wanted to believe her, to forgive her. But could I? Could I live in a world where trust was no longer a guarantee? I didn't know. But for the first time in our relationship, I didn't know if I could stay. And that thought was more painful than anything else. The night dragged on in a blur of emotion. Laura sat on the floor, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do next. The rage inside me was a dull roar, but beneath it, there was a crushing sadness. I had loved this woman. I had trusted her with everything. And now that trust had been shattered into pieces, scattered across the floor between us. Please, Jake, please, she begged through her tears, looking up at me with desperation in her eyes. I love you. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I never meant to hurt you. Please believe me. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to reach out to her. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay. But it wouldn't be okay. Nothing would ever be the same again. I walked to the kitchen, my mind spinning. The email, the photos, the confession. It was all too much. I had no idea who I was anymore, standing in this house that no longer felt like mine. I poured myself a drink, hoping it would calm the storm in my head. I took a long sip, feeling the burn of the alcohol slide down my throat, but it did nothing to ease the weight in my chest. Laura's sobs were faint in the background, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. I didn't know if I even wanted to. I couldn't erase the image of her and Daniel, their faces close, their hands intertwined. The way she had hidden it from me, the way she had lied and betrayed me, it was impossible to ignore. I turned to face her, the coldness in my eyes reflecting the chill I felt in my heart. You said you were unhappy, I said, my voice quiet but sharp. You said this happened because you were lonely. But Laura, I was here. I was with you. I thought we were building a life together. You didn't come to me when things weren't working. You didn't talk to me. You just went behind my back. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading for some sign that I would forgive her. I was afraid, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to fix things between us. And then I met Daniel, and everything changed. I never wanted it to get this far. I thought I could control it. I thought I could keep my life together. The words felt hollow. The betrayal had been so much more than just the affair. It was the lies, the secret life she had been living behind my back. She had been keeping me in the dark, pretending everything was fine while she was seeking comfort elsewhere. It wasn't just about Daniel, it was about the trust that had been broken between us. Do you still love him? I asked, my voice shaky but firm. I had to know. I needed to understand if she had truly moved on from him, if he was just some temporary mistake, or had she fallen for him in a way that couldn't be undone. Laura's face went pale, and she looked away, as though the question had pierced her. She shook her head, her hands wringing together nervously. No, Jake, I don't love him. I never did. It was a mistake. I was looking for something I wasn't getting from you, But it was wrong. I know that now. Please believe me. Her words should have given me relief, but they didn't. The doubt still lingered, clawing at my mind. Was it really just a mistake? Or was there something deeper, something she wasn't telling me? I don't know if I can believe you, Laura, I said, my voice low and filled with hurt. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. The trust we had, it's gone. You've torn it apart piece by piece, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if it's even possible. Her face crumpled again, and she reached out, her hand trembling, as if she were trying to bridge the gap between us. I'll do anything, Jake. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut ties with Daniel. I'll be completely open with you. Just please don't leave me. Please don't give up on us. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me still loved her, still wanted to believe that we could somehow fix this. But another part of me was too angry, too broken to even consider the idea of staying. I had given her everything, trusted her with my heart, and she had betrayed that trust in the worst way possible. I don't know if I can stay, I said, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. I don't know if I can live with the doubt, with the fear that this could happen again. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. She stood there, her face filled with grief, and I realized in that moment how much I was hurting her. I could see the guilt and remorse in her eyes, and part of me wanted to tell her that I understood, that I could forgive her. But the pain I felt was too raw, too fresh. I didn't know how to move forward from here. I didn't know if I wanted to. I need time, Laura, I said, my voice quieter now, as I ran a hand through my hair in frustration. I need time to think. I need to figure out what I want. And I can't do that if you're constantly asking me for forgiveness. I need space to figure this out on my own. She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears, but she didn't speak. She knew, just as I did, that this was far from over. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be easy. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't know what the future held. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, work, meals, sleep, each action feeling more like a mechanical process than anything remotely resembling my usual routine. Claire was still in the house, but it felt as if we were living in two different worlds. She was there, physically but emotionally. It felt like an ocean of distance separated us. I couldn't escape the images, the photos, the lies she had told me. Laura had been trying. She'd brought me coffee in the morning, asking how I was doing, trying to hold my hand whenever I was in the same room as her. But each time she reached for me, I pulled away, not out of cruelty, but because I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to believe her when she said it was all a mistake, that it wasn't about love, that it wasn't something I should be afraid of, but the doubt still clawed at me. I kept asking myself if I could ever trust her again, or if this was just a crack that had already broken the foundation beyond repair. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I wanted to, but I didn't know how. Telling a friend, a family member, would make it real, and I wasn't ready to face the reality that my life, my marriage, might never be the same again. What would I tell them? That my wife had betrayed me? That I had found pictures of her with another man at a hotel? They'd want to help, to comfort me, but the truth was that no one could fix this. No one could fix her mistakes. I tried to focus on work, bury myself in the spreadsheets and meetings that normally kept me distracted. But the work didn't help. Every time my phone buzzed, I found myself holding my breath, wondering if it was an email or a message from her. I kept waiting for the next bombshell to drop, the next piece of information that would send my world spinning again. I didn't want to keep waiting for a mistake to come out, but it felt inevitable. I found myself spending more time at the gym, working off the anger that had built up inside me. It was the only time I felt like I could breathe, pushing my body until it ached, until I couldn't think about anything else. The weight of the dumbbells in my hands was an anchor, grounding me in the present, in something I could control. It was the only escape I had from the mental chaos that had become my reality. But every night when I came home, I was back to square one. The empty house, the silence, the heavy air between Laura and me. I couldn't avoid her forever. I couldn't ignore the fact that we had to talk about this. But every time I saw her, the words I wanted to say felt like they were lodged in my throat. I finally knew I had to make a decision. It wasn't fair to her, and it wasn't fair to me to live in this in-between place where I was neither fully committed to moving on, nor fully committed to leaving. But even as I said that to myself, I felt a knot in my stomach. What was the right choice? Could I look past the betrayal, or was I too broken to ever see her the same way again? That night, I finally decided to confront her again. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, neither moving forward nor backward. I couldn't pretend I didn't know what had happened. I had to face it, even if it meant making a choice I wasn't ready to make. She was in the kitchen when I entered, her back turned as she stirred something in a pot. The sight of her, so familiar and yet so foreign, made my chest tighten. I had to do this. I had to ask the questions I'd been avoiding, but I didn't know where to start. "Laura," I said, my voice rough from not speaking for so long, "we need to talk." She turned to face me, her eyes already filled with anticipation, as if she knew what was coming. "Jake, I know. I know things are bad right now, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please," she paused, trying to collect herself. "Please let me explain more. I'll do anything." I shook my head, cutting her off. "I don't know if there's anything left to explain. I don't know if I'm ready to hear any more excuses. What I need, Laura, is for you to tell me, do you want to be with me or him?" The words felt like a slap in the face, but they were the only words that made sense. I had to know. I had to know if there was any part of her that still wanted our marriage, or if she was already emotionally checked out. She stared at me for a long moment, and for a brief second, I thought she might lie. I thought she might say anything to make this easier, to protect herself, but then her shoulders slumped, and I saw the raw truth in her eyes, the pain, the regret. "I don't know," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "I wish I knew. But right now, Jake, I don't know if I'm capable of loving you the way you deserve. I don't know if I'm capable of healing the damage I've done." My heart twisted in my chest. It was the answer I had feared, the answer I had been dreading, but at the same time, it felt like a relief. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it was the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, was something I could work with. "So what now?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sadness. "Do we just pretend like everything is fine? Do we go on living in this lie?" Laura wiped her eyes, the tears staining her cheeks. "I don't want to lie to you anymore, Jake, but I can't undo the past. And I can't promise you that I'll ever be the person you thought I was. I wish I could, but I can't." I looked at her, the weight of her confession hanging heavily between us. "Then I guess we're done," I said quietly, my voice breaking. "I can't keep living like this. I can't keep wondering if you're lying to me, wondering if you'll leave me again. I can't do it." The words were final, but they felt like a relief at the same time. I wasn't ready to walk away from the life we had built together, but I couldn't keep pretending that everything would magically fix itself. Not after everything that had happened. "I'm sorry, Jake," Laura whispered, her voice cracking. "I truly am." And as I turned to walk away, the pain in my chest was overwhelming, but I knew one thing. I had made the right decision. It was time to move on, to let go of the past and to find a way forward. The days following our conversation felt like a blur. The finality of the words we had spoken hung heavily in the air. I had told Laura that we were done. I had told her that I couldn't live in this uncertainty, in this broken version of our marriage. And as painful as it was, I knew I had made the right choice. But knowing it was the right decision didn't make it any easier. I had spent the last few years building my life around Laura. We had shared everything, the good and the bad. We had built memories together, a future together. But now it felt like I was watching it all slip away, like sand through my fingers. The apartment we had once called our home was now just a place I spent my nights. I slept on the couch, the empty space beside me serving as a constant reminder of the love that was lost. I didn't want to be there, but I didn't know where else to go. I'd gone through the motions at work, trying to bury my thoughts and emotions in spreadsheets and meetings. I kept telling myself that I would get through it, that the pain would eventually fade, but it didn't. Every time I looked at the photos she had sent me, every time I remembered the moments when I had trusted her completely, the weight of the betrayal would hit me all over again. I thought about the man she had been with, Daniel. What had he given her that I hadn't? What had made her turn to him, to seek comfort in the arms of someone else? And more than anything, I couldn't stop thinking about the lie. How long had she been lying to me? How much of our life together had been built on deception? I spent a lot of time thinking about the past. I thought about our first date, the way Laura had smiled at me, the way we had shared so many dreams together. I thought about the nights we had spent talking about our hopes for the future, about our plans to build a family. Those dreams now felt hollow. I couldn't remember the last time we had shared a conversation that didn't feel like an interrogation. I couldn't remember the last time I had truly trusted her. The house felt quieter now. The silence between us had grown unbearable. And it wasn't just the absence of Laura's presence, it was the absence of the love we had once shared. I had thought we were immune to everything. I had believed in us, in our connection. But now I wasn't sure what was left. It was a few days later when I heard from her again. I had been avoiding her calls and texts, trying to put space between us, trying to heal. But this time, when the message came through, I didn't ignore it. I opened the text. Jake, I just want to say that I understand. I know I've hurt you, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I will always love you, even if you can't be with me. I'm sorry for everything I've done. Please take care of yourself. I hope you find happiness. I sat there staring at the message for what felt like hours. The finality of it. The honesty. I didn't know what I expected her to say, but it wasn't this. I had spent so long holding on to the hope that we could fix things, that somehow we could repair the damage. But now in her words, I realized that maybe we had both known this was the end all along. She was giving me the space I needed to move on, and I had to do the same for her. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to respond. There were no words left. There was nothing left to say. The next few days were a blur. I spent my time packing up my things, trying to create some semblance of normalcy, even if it felt like I was just going through the motions. I started looking for a new place to live, somewhere I could start over, somewhere I could finally begin to heal. I didn't expect it to be easy. I didn't expect to wake up one day and feel whole again, but I knew that staying in this limbo would only keep me stuck in the pain. I had to leave the past behind, even if it meant leaving behind a version of myself that no longer existed. The apartment felt different when I packed up my things. The walls no longer held the memories of laughter and love. They were just walls now, empty and hollow, reflecting the emptiness I felt inside. But the moment I stepped out of that door for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, as if a burden had been placed on me for too long, and I was finally free of it. I moved into a small place on the edge of town, a modest apartment with nothing but the bare essentials. It felt like a fresh start, a new chapter. And for the first time in days, I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I wasn't okay. I wasn't happy, but I was surviving. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. There was still so much I had to work through. The anger, the sadness, the betrayal. But I couldn't carry all of that forever. Eventually, I would find peace. I would find a way to forgive, even if it wasn't for her, but for myself. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, but at least I was walking it alone. And in that silence, I found something that had been missing for a long time. Peace. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. Time, I realized, doesn't just heal all wounds. It makes you numb to the pain. It doesn't mean you forget or that it doesn't still hurt, but eventually the sting dulls. The ache in my chest isn't as sharp as it used to be. Every morning when I wake up, there's a moment of disbelief. A second when I almost expect to see Laura next to me, her face peaceful in sleep, her warmth surrounding me. But that moment passes quickly, and the reality sets in. I'm alone, and that's okay. It's what I need. I'm not angry anymore. The anger faded somewhere in the middle of all the sleepless nights, somewhere between packing up my life and finding a new place to live. I still feel a pang of hurt every now and then when I pass a restaurant we used to visit, or when I hear a song that was ours. But it's bearable now. I've started going to therapy, I thought I could handle everything on my own, but there's no shame in seeking help. It's the first time in my life that I've really allowed myself to feel everything: the hurt, the betrayal, the confusion. I spent so much of my marriage trying to push everything down, trying to be the man who could handle it all, but I couldn't. I'm learning that it's okay to not have all the answers, and that it's okay to hurt. I can't change the past. I can't undo what Laura did, but I can control what happens next. There are still moments when I feel like I'm lost, when I wonder if I'll ever truly move past this. But then I look around at the small apartment I now call home. It's not much. The walls are bare, save for a few pictures and some random artwork I picked up at a flea market. It's humble, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of independence, of self. I've started picking up old hobbies I hadn't done in years: running, reading, photography, things I used to love but had neglected in the whirlwind of marriage. I'm starting to feel like myself again, like the man I was before everything changed. It's not easy. There are days when I wonder if I'll ever be able to trust again, if I'll ever open up to someone the way I did with Laura. But for now, I'm not worrying about that. I'm focusing on myself, on rebuilding who I am and learning to be okay with being alone. Laura hasn't contacted me since the night I left. I had been prepared for a flood of texts or phone calls, but there's been nothing. Part of me wishes she would reach out, to apologize one last time, but I know it wouldn't change anything. The damage has been done. I've heard from mutual friends that she's been trying to move on too, trying to put the pieces of her life back together. Maybe she's doing the same thing I am. Maybe she's finding her own way forward. I think about her sometimes, not with bitterness, but with a quiet sadness. I wonder what went wrong, what happened between us. But I also know that sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes the people we think we know the best are the ones who can surprise us the most. I think Laura was always searching for something she couldn't find in me. Maybe I wasn't enough for her, or maybe I didn't know how to be what she needed. The answers don't matter anymore. I've learned a lot in these months. I've learned that healing isn't linear. There are good days and bad days. But most importantly, I've learned that I deserve better than the lie I lived in for so long. I deserve a love that's whole, that's built on trust and honesty. And I believe that someday I'll find that. I don't know when, and I don't know how, but I know it's out there. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. There are still days when I wonder if I've made the right choice, if I could have fought harder for us. But then I remind myself that I can't live in the past. I can't keep wondering, what if? I made the decision to walk away for a reason. I needed to find my own peace. And so, here I am. Alone, yes, but not broken. I'm stronger than I was before. I'm learning to trust myself again. And that's enough for now.